This is a paid press release. So let's be clear before we even start. This isn't journalism, what we're looking at the screen now. This is a paid advert. They've literally paid to have their opinion distributed as news. San Francisco. AI has upended the foundation of open source security, and commercial open source applications must close their code to protect sensitive data. A lot to deconstruct there. Open source security has always relied on people to find and fix any problems, said Pierre Richelson, co-founder of Cal.com. Rich Elson. Cal. Cal is Elson.
My name is Jor-El. Cal? That's my name. Kal-El. It is. I have so many questions.
Open source security always relied on people to find and fix any problems, said the rich son of El.
Kal-El, no! He's confused. He doesn't know who he is.
The world's largest Next.js project is JavaScript. Now AI attackers are flaunting that transparency. Anthropic's Mythos model proved in early April that it was capable of breaking into some of the more secure software systems of the world, including OpenBSD. Go OpenBSD, which has a huge emphasis on security.
It's the vault at the Bellagio. It's located below the Strip, beneath 200 feet of solid earth. It safeguards every dime that passes through each of the 3 casinos above it. We're gonna rob it.
Smash and grab job, huh? Slightly more complicated than that.
Open source code is basically like handing out the blueprint to a bank vault.
Okay, bad news first. This place houses a security system that rivals most nuclear missile silos,
said Bailey, CEO of Cal.com. And now there are 100 times more hackers studying the blueprint. I mean, where do the numbers come from? Where does 100 come from? Well, phrase 75% of statistics are made up, including this one. Another claim here, open source applications are 5 times easier to exploit than close, according to a CEO of a security company flogging their wares. Don't worry, he's got the fix. It's all right. He's got the fix. Let's see if we can find any. Okay, there's no footnotes saying where the source comes from, but this is a cut and paste jobby. So let's go to original content. See if we've got any numbers for that. No, but this also is pointing us to Cal.com, so maybe we'll find the original article there. Insights on scheduling productivity and building on open software, but then we're not anymore. Okay, there's a couple of articles here. Oh, this is him, Bailey. This is not an easy post to write. Okay, there's no sources there. Let's look at the YouTube video. We haven't sourced this. In this video, Bailey, let's get this right this time. Bailey Pumfleet, Cal.com founder and CEO, shares an important and emotional update. When they tell you it's an emotional update, it's marketing, right? It's like, be ready for emotion. Let's get the Oscar. Let's get the Oscar now, right? And it's like, be ready for the Oscar. It's emotional. It's like, the lady doth protest too much. Now we're really going to be emotional. All you people who contribute to our software, we're going to screw you over. But don't worry, it's emotional. It's emotional for me. It's not prejudged. Let's judge at the end.
Cal.com is going closed source. I never thought I'd ever be saying these words, but so much has changed in the world of security.
Does look a little bit like a hostage video. Obviously, he's much better at YouTubing than I am. Everybody is. Everybody is better presented and better. And they're younger as well. Okay, youth on the side. Spent some money on his haircut. Is this a set? Is this a fake background? Maybe this is a really nice office. I don't know. His hair is looking very good. And, you know, designer stubble. It's very well presented. He's very, yeah. He's a proper YouTuber already. So somebody replies at this bottom, got it. So because AI makes it easier to find vulnerabilities and patch them, you would rather have your code be vulnerable and unpatched because it makes people feel better? By that logic, all encryption standards should be closed source as well. Can't you argue the other way around? Being open source is the faster way to find and close your already existing vulnerabilities in your code base. They've always wanted to make it closed source. They're just using AI as an excuse. As much as I like the idea of open source, what it stands for, this honestly makes so much sense. So somebody bought it. This video makes me sad. I hope you visit it soon. Somebody says, good move. Anyone who disagrees with this should just vibe clone it and see how far they can go. Seems to be a bad excuse for money grabbing. Just the typical dumb security through obscurity BS, now with an AI twist. If you're genuinely afraid of this, use the AI yourself to find the bugs what hackers do. Those who like AI and hate open source have a very large overlap on the Venn. Interesting point. Thank you for explaining Kali AI. Yuck, sad face. I'm niche. I'm like a fine wine. Not everyone can afford it. It's like niche. Not everyone can get it.
Security, software, and open source, that it makes it pretty much impossible for us to continue as an open source company.
Impossible. Okay, Linux is open source. Firefox is open source. Thunderbird is open source. They've got a nice calendar. Yeah, impossible is a big word. I mean, AI has upended open source security. We must close the code. Is a little bit of a leap. I mean, AI absolutely makes finding vulnerabilities faster, but that does that for all code, all software, not just open source. I mean, closing the code doesn't remove any risk, really. It just removes visibility for defenders.
Cal.com from the start was always designed to be a commercial open source company. We obviously have a profitable business while still making all of the source code free and open source and available for everyone. And that worked great. We're firm believers in open source, and we really love the whole world of open source software. And we're very fortunate that we're able to have a commercial venture capital funded business that also supports the open source side. Now, unfortunately, a lot of things have changed pretty recently in the world regarding AI.
Gotham's time has come. Like Constantinople or Rome before it, the city has become a breeding ground for suffering and injustice. It is beyond saving and must be allowed to die.
As I'm sure you've noticed, things like AI coding agents have started to become actually useful.
Their framing is very much that
Gotham must be destroyed.
it isn't we chose to do this, it's we're forced to do this. The baddies, they forced us.
You were the chosen one! It was said that you would destroy the Sith, not join them! Bring balance to the Force, not leave it in darkness!
They've been around for a little while, but a lot has changed that make them actually competent enough that nowadays a lot of serious companies are able to use AI coding agents in their workflows. The part that nobody is really talking about right now is there's a lot of AI cybersecurity tools which basically can go ahead and scan code bases or take a look at API responses, and they find vulnerabilities in applications. And as I'm sure you can imagine, open source drastically changes the risk perspective, because it's kind of like giving the bank robbers the blueprint to the vault.
Where will you be when the atomic bombs fall? You can secure your family's future by reserving a spot in a state-of-the-art underground vault from Vaultec.
If you can tell what code is going to generate what out.
Oh, I kind of hate this vault analogy, to be honest. I mean, we're not trying to build a vault.
That's right, Bob. Act now, and your family can wait out the horrors of nuclear devastation.
The digital world is not like Ethan in Mission Impossible hanging from a rope and going into a physical vault.
And Doris, the vault will have all the amenities of your modern-day home, and it's attractive.
I mean, we have encryption. Like, modern banking works on encryption. It doesn't work on, vaults. It works on public encryption algorithms.
And Sally, in the vault, you might meet that special someone.
And a vault is like, you put things that are kind of valuable, but kind of generic in a vault, right? Like gold bars that are pressed to look identical, or cash, or diamonds. If you look at, like, really valuable things, Michelangelo's David, that's in a museum open to everyone. You can go and look at it. Or, I mean, the space shuttle, or the space rockets they're making. I mean, they're visible to everyone.
Just as you would on the surface. And in a few short years, you and your fellow vault dwellers will repopulate our great country.
I mean, like a plane, really advanced Airbus plane or Boeing plane. The specs are open to everyone. Everyone's got all the specs and the diagrams.
And Billy, you'll have lots of swell kids to play with.
The Tube Network. Sometimes talk about privatizing the Tube Network and say, it'll bring in $40 billion or $15 billion. The map for that is on every service in it. So being secure and being secret don't don't match.
Reserve your family spot in a state-of-the-art underground vault today.
And a bank vault is a bit of a naff analogy. A bank vault is a very boring place. It doesn't really have any moving parts. You put something in and you close it. It's kind of boring. You know, can't we have a train network? Can't we have an aeroplane, like an interesting thing? A spaceship?
Sign up now and prepare for the future.
We're not building vaults, we're building systems that have to work in public, like Michelangelo's David, like the Tube Network. Attackers don't need the blueprint. They can just interact with the system, probe it, reverse engineer it. I mean, the weirdest thing is they're in Next.js, and Next.js isn't even secret, right? There's not even... I mean, this is the code to their website. JavaScript has the indentation removed, but you can still just put it back. I mean, this is completely readable to anyone, especially to an AI, but you can also just get you don't even need AI. There's decompilers that will just put the indentation back in. I mean, even an editor might be able to put the indentation back in. You put the indentation back in very easily and understand it very easily. And obviously AI doesn't need the indentation. The line breaks, you can put the line breaks back in. You can't really hide JavaScript. And once you've got the JavaScript, you can study the JavaScript, and from the JavaScript you can basically get a map of the back end. You basically got the blueprint to the back end, because you can see what APIs are being called, what error handling code is happening around it, what the rate of requests are. You can see everything. There's no, if it's a web app, front end heavy web app, there's nothing you can hide. Attackers don't even really read the source code as the first step. You know, they just use network scanners and futzers and
output. It becomes a lot easier to kind of reverse engineer everything and exploit it a little bit more. And that poses a very, very large problem for us. One of the leading AI security vulnerability companies actually said that open source software is 5 to 10 times easier to hack than closed source software.
That number again, unsourced. Any sources? No. I guess they're not into sharing sources anymore. The premise is just wrong. You don't need the source code to understand what a system does. You can call the API, you can observe the outputs, you can fuzz the inputs, you can trace behavior. AI can decompile the binary. You can decompile the binary anyway, and they're not even, JavaScript's not in binary. With their system, you can hack the API, but if it's something distributed, like a C library or whatever, you can decompile it. The system just exposes its behavior anyway. The code explains it, but the system exposes its own behavior. I mean, having the code makes analysis easier, but it also makes defense easier. I mean, with open source, vulnerabilities can be found faster, fixes can be reviewed publicly, patches can be applied quickly, knowledge is shared. I mean, if attackers can understand system faster, then can defenders. It's like the guy said in the comment, the defenders have AIs too. I mean, the 5 to 10% easier claim is doing all the work here, but no methodology, no data set, no definition of easier. It's just marketing spin. I mean, it's not evidence, it's just a quote made of nothing. Security doesn't come from making things harder to understand. It comes from designing systems correctly, limiting access, isolating data, validating inputs. I mean, if understanding your code makes it exploitable, the problem is the attacker, it's the design. We had this conversation in the 80s. Open source doesn't make code easy to hack, it makes it easy to fix.
And that poses a significant threat. We obviously have to take care.
So not everything is equally successful as open source. I don't really know what the extent of their community is. In a video we talked about before how there are different kernels, and there was the Herd, there was Solaris kernel, there's BSD kernel, there was all kinds of kernels, but it was the Linux kernel that got the momentum. 30,000 people have contributed to the Linux kernel. Being open source makes it better. Whereas if you just have an arbitrary piece of SaaS software and you just throw the code over the wall, then you're probably not going to get a lot of contributions. So it's probably, you're not losing anything by closed sourcing in that sense. But that's just about finding the right seams. If you've thrown I'm not saying that's what they've done, I don't know about their code base, but if you have thrown the code base over the wall and it has got no input, it's not the right thing. You need to break it down, find the seams, find the locus of collaboration, if that's BS term. Find the places where other people are doing the same things and collaborate on that. Break it down, break it up, collaborate on the things that are useful. You don't necessarily have to, the whole app has to be one thing. The whole app doesn't have to be the thing you share, you collaborate on. You can collaborate on smaller bits. One of the reasons why Linux was more successful than Herd is because Linux was one discrete slice that people could collaborate on and people could add to things and build their own distributions around. If you are collaborating like the level of Linux kernel's collaborating, you would never close source it because you need that collaboration, right? You want that collaboration. If you can close source it and carry on your company anyway, then you haven't really open sourced it. You haven't really open sourced it in the way that really open source. You know, they're throwing stuff over the wall, but there's also making things. I mean, there are also open source applications like Firefox that hit the right spot. Even they, to get from the Netscape to Firefox, they had to break it down. Netscape was a big monolith that had the calendar, email client, all sorts of stuff in it. They broke it up so that Firefox is just a clean, fast browser. And they found that was the right level to collaborate on. Some other libraries become very small, just like OpenSSL, do one thing well. Whereas some apps like Thunderbird or Firefox, they are working really well as apps. But they will rely on like open source that's smaller and open source that's other stuff. When Firefox shows a ping, it will use libpng. If it shows a JPEG, it'll use libjpeg. It has loads of open source dependencies under it. zlib for compression and all kinds of stuff. I mean, like the Linux kernel itself will have glibc under it and all the GNU stuff. You know, systemd has to boot it. OpenSSL and zlib and all kinds of stuff in it. So not everybody can be the Linux kernel. Some people have to be the zlib. Facebook, they didn't open source Facebook in one big blob because it's of no use to anyone else. But they open source React because that was the problem that other people have. So they could all collaborate on React. Google's infrastructure can't be run by anyone else unless you're at Google scale, but they open sourced Kubernetes. They extracted that into a general problem. That, you know, they open sourced the pattern, not the infrastructure. Lyft open source Envoy, their networking proxy. Google again open source TensorFlow, their machine learning patterns. You have to work with the community. It's not good enough just to say, oh, our code's on GitHub. You need to work with the community to find the right levels of, and that could be trial and error. Maybe you start by just throwing the whole thing on GitHub if that's what you can do. But when you find that nobody really maintains it, nobody interested, then you think about like, who else can we work with? How can we reduce the maintenance headache of the code we have? How can we get the benefits of open source by collaborating on subset? What's a problem somebody else has? Can we go and get involved in somebody else? So instead of making our own software, can we get somebody else's software that's already open source and extend it to help us what we need? Can we decompose our software into a series of bits we can help maintain? If this thing was really that successful, I don't believe they would have closed it. I don't think if it was bringing the benefits of open source, then they were really doing open source more than a marketing term, more than just, oh yeah, we're open source, we're moral people, we're good, we've shoved it on GitHub. But have you actually made it that you could collaborate with other people? And if you have, I just don't see that you would close it.
Care of all of our customers' data. We're a scheduling company. The kind of data that we process is incredibly sensitive. We have access to people's calendars and their booking information.
Think of the children.
And although at the surface level, booking information may not seem like the most critical of data compared to, you know, banks and things like that, there is a tremendous amount of value in, you know, patient bookings for healthcare. There is actual deal flow that moves markets that goes through Cal.com. And protecting the security and integrity of that data is absolutely critical.
Firstly, open source health apps are the best apps. Night Scout is amazing. And if there was a bank with open source software, I'd be there with my money. I'd move all my money into it. Of course, protecting customer data is important. No one disagrees with that. But it's a non sequitur. This is a rhetorical pivot, not a technical argument. You've gone from, he's leapt again from this data is sensitive to therefore the code must be closed. These two things are not the same. Open and closed doesn't protect data. Sensitive data is protected by access control, authentication, encryption, isolation, not whether the source code is public. Attackers don't steal your data by reading your GitHub repo. They steal it through your running system. The biggest risks aren't code visibility. They're misconfigured servers, leaked credentials, weak auth, exposed APIs, human attacks. The state-run attacks we've recently had would have worked on closed source software equally as well. And those problems don't go away if the code is hidden. They got somebody's authentication details. They got, you know, one of the developers' authentication details and can make commits. That's happened with closed source, open source. I mean, this healthcare market, sensitive data in here, this is emotional escalation.
Think of the children.
Now we know what they meant by emotional update. They meant the technical arguments would be duff, but
Think of the children.
harsh but true.
And so with the current situation as it is, we would almost be negligent to continue to be open source and expose our customers to this level of risk.
I mean, calling open source negligent is a huge step. I mean, that would imply Linux is negligent, Firefox is negligent, OpenSSL is negligent, Huge bits of Windows are negligent. Huge bits of the Apple OS are negligent. Some of the most secure critical systems in the world are open source. And all of the most critical systems in the world depend on open source. The data is sensitive. You want more security, more auditing, more testing, more eyeballs. The more critical the system, the more you want it to be understood, not hidden. That's why if there was a bank whose source code I could go and read and audit and peer review, I'd have the money there, right? That's where I put my money. I mean, yes, data is sensitive, of course it is, but that doesn't mean the code has to be closed. Sensitive data is protected by good architecture, not by hiding the source code. Calling open source negligent, I mean, calling most of the internet is negligent. Data security is an important problem, but this is the wrong solution. We've got to separate the emotion from the logic here. This is a bit knee-jerk. AI-generated exploits are a new feature of the development landscape, but it's not time to panic.
Don't panic, Mr. Manring!
The things that I'm telling you are very much cutting edge. AI security vulnerability scanners, they are something which is currently being built and iterated at a pace that, you know, we've almost never seen before.
But it's a faster version of the same thing. And these North Korean hacks had a lot of people involved, and there's been spectacular hacks of closed source systems, especially. A large organization using Windows have been blackmailed for millions of dollars to get access to the data. Closed source has a terrible history of security. At the risk of repeating myself, AI vulnerability scanners, AI hackers, incredibly easy to attack any open source company, but incredibly easy to attack a closed source company. This is the strongest part of his argument, but it's also where it overreaches. Again, like with the think of the children part before, it's true premise, wrong conclusion. AI is absolutely getting better at coding, at vulnerability scanning, code analysis, fuzzing, all true. But none of that is specific to open source. It applies equally to closed source. AI doesn't need source code to work. It can analyze binaries, observe API behavior, generate inputs, fuzz endpoints, reverse engineer from the JavaScript, do human attacks. If your system is exposed to the internet, AI can study it, open or closed. At some point you have to give the system to the customers, and at that point AI can attack it. He says, oh, it can scan all the code, but that's misleading. Your attackers don't need your code, they just need your interface, and your interface, you've given it to the customers. So you've given it to the attackers. The real attack surface isn't the repo, it's the running system.
I'm sure you see tons of AI news about how every week AI gets smarter and smarter. The same thing is happening with AI hackers.
He's ignoring the asymmetry. Yes, AI lowers the cost to attack, but it also lowers the cost to defend. On your own projects, do automated code scanning, static analysis, automated path suggestions, shared fixing across projects. If attackers get faster, defenders get faster too. And this, back to the original point, Anthropic's Mythos model proved in early April that it was capable of breaking into some of the more secure systems in the world. And what did Anthropic do? They gave key open source projects early access to make the system secure. The AI companies are built on open source. It's their interest that the open source is fixed and it's secure. So the AI companies have an interest in using their AI models to fix open source before it gets to the hackers, before the hackers can use these. And these frontier models are way ahead of what you can run on your own system. The good guys have the good weapons. The good guys have the first access to the stuff. The open source systems have access before the proprietary systems, before the closed systems, before the attackers. Anthropic gave access to the open source project and said, we're not releasing our model until the open source software is ready for it, until the open source software is secure. They're using the Mythos to secure the open source software.
And the simple reality is, it has become incredibly easy to attack any open source company by literally just using an AI security scanner, and you can scan through all of the code, all of the AI security scanner, and you can scan
what are you saying?
To attack any open source company.
Any open source company. That's a bit of a red flag. This is just the marketing, the PR. All open source companies are bad. No, that ignores different companies will have different architectures, they'll have different security practices, they'll have different threat models. Security isn't determined by your license file.
By literally just using an AI security scanner, and you can scan through all of the code, all of the backend that processes the data and exposes it via APIs, and you can use AI to very quickly pick up on where are there vulnerabilities in there.
But you don't need the code to do that. You can do that as soon as you put the API on the internet.
And the problem is that makes the cost to hack come down significantly.
But then the cost to audit and defend yourself comes down significantly. True that the old thing about castles, every part of the castle has to be secure. The attacker only has to have one ladder. But it is possible to secure a castle. It is possible to have a sally port and then you can pop out and knock over the ladder, so on and so forth. Pour boiling oil on his head. There is a limit. You have actually conquered all the attack services. It just requires more determination on the defender's part than the attacker's part. So AI doesn't make the attacks cheap, it also makes the defense scalable. And it makes the defense, I think it's a net positive, AI. I think it makes the defense better. It makes the average code base have better security than before. And I think it covers the basics that perhaps weren't covered before. So it's like a new kind of linting. It's a new kind of quality control to run security checking AI over your code base. And I think on balance, it actually makes software more secure, because before AI, most code bases, apart from the greatest open source ones, especially the closed source ones, which, sellotape and string behind the scenes, the point about open source is that peer review forces you to write quality code. When you can hide it, it can all be sellotape and string. When your reputation's on the line, when it's public, then you make it as good as possible. So closed source code bases have always been the most insecure of all. But AI will improve everybody's code bases and make them more secure. And I think mostly make them more secure against the common things which were always exploitable. That's the point. Most code bases were liable to more traditional approaches.
I mean, before...
There's a hidden assumption here. His whole argument assumes if attackers understand the system, it becomes exploitable. But a secure system should remain secure even when understood. By being understandable, it becomes secure. By being understandable, it becomes secure. You know it's a secure castle when you have a big moat and a big drawbridge and 1,000 guys with bows and arrows. You know it's secure. You don't have to have secrecy. You know it's secure. You put your big giant catapult on the roof where everyone can see it and say, don't mess with us, we've got a giant catapult.
I mean, before, the whole world operated on this kind of security through obscurity thing, which is it's so hard to hack software that you need a really experienced hacker to do it, which means that, exploits aren't going to happen too often. I mean...
I have to repeat that bit.
I mean, before... the whole world operated on this kind of security through obscurity thing, which is it's so hard to...
So he says, I mean before, the whole world operated on this kind of security through obscurity thing. Let me say that again. I mean before, the whole world operated on this kind of security through obscurity thing. I mean before, the whole world operated on this kind of security through obscurity thing. I don't think he understands what he's talking about here. With due respect, I don't really think he understands what he's talking about here. Security through obscurity is what he is advocating for. And what he says was never how security actually worked. This is where his argument goes completely off the rails. This is not what security through obscurity means. Security through obscurity isn't attacks are rare because hacking is hard. Security through obscurity is this system is safe because people don't understand how it works. And that's not security. That's hoping nobody looks too closely. The world didn't have obscurity because it was good. It had it because tools were worse, analysis was slow, few people could do it, there wasn't the internet. It didn't work because it was secure, it worked because it was expensive to break. AI doesn't break security through obscurity, it exposes that it was never real security in the first place. And his argument, closed source software, is security through obscurity. I don't think it was true that only elite hackers could attack systems. It just people didn't have the motivation to attack the systems. People didn't have the opportunity to attack the systems. Whereas now the internet is everywhere in the world, including in regions where, to be frank, the software opportunities are less and countries are corrupt and authoritarian and they want their people to hack Western systems, or they want people to attack, or they protect people who attack. So the fact that there wasn't a design principle, it was just a temporary limitation. It wasn't security by design, it was security by inconvenience. And AI moves that inconvenience, but also a global internet network moves that convenience. Security or obscurity was always just putting your head in the sand like an ostrich. The conclusion isn't, we need more obscurity, let's close our software so we've got more obscurity. It's, we need systems that don't rely on obscurity. If your system only works because it's hard to understand, AI is going to break it. AI is going to understand it. If you think, oh, I make my systems close and that will protect me from AI, it won't. It won't do anything. It's doubling down on the problem.
exploits aren't going to happen too often. I mean, of course, you've heard about companies getting exploited, but it requires a hacker of a very advanced level to really care about your application and dedicate thousands of hours to exploit it. Now you can just kind of point an AI agent, especially an open source code base, and say, go attack this.
Elite hackers was never the model. It's friction as the model, right? Obscurity wasn't the model. Friction was the model. That wasn't security by obscurity. That was security by friction. Limited tools, high cost, few people capable. That's not security at all. It's just friction. And AI lowers cost, true, but for everyone. Security researchers use it. Companies use it. Open source maintainers use it. It doesn't just create more attackers, it creates more auditors. Point an AI open source and it hacks it. It requires there to be something to hack. It requires there to be vulnerabilities in the code, which the good AIs are going to be finding and fixing. And a real exploitation requires understanding the context, chaining issues together, bypassing mitigations, interacting with a live system. Finding a bug is not the same as breaking a system.
And chances are it's going to find stuff. If you're in the developer world, you have probably heard about like vulnerabilities that have been found recently in things like React and Firefox. These are obviously huge open source projects, and AI vulnerability scanners are now coming in and are able to attack this stuff like we've never seen before.
Audit this stuff. They're auditing this stuff as well. And I think his criticism is actually backwards. More vulnerabilities are being found. That's good. The AIs didn't create those vulnerabilities. Those vulnerabilities were already there. That's not a failure. That's visibility increasing. I mean, more bug reports are good. It doesn't mean less secure. It means more secure, over time. We have this like short-term blah moment where suddenly the AIs have increasing strength. But we'll get over it. We'll reorient our pipelines. We'll change how we deploy software. We will run the AIs ourselves. The AI companies are helping. The AI companies are giving open source projects early access. They're giving them more access than the attackers can potentially get. I mean, those bugs always existed. They just weren't found yet. They weren't public. They weren't prioritized. These bugs could be being exploited by state actors, by criminals, by gangs already, and we don't know about them, and AI is finding them. There's Windows bugs that have been exploited for years. There's a whole hardware communities that rely on jailbreaking devices, closed source devices that have been jailbreaking their whole history and never fixed. I remember the Xbox Linux required a jailbreak, and that was, never fixed. You could always use Xbox Linux. Loads of Linux on Android phones require the jailbreaks that are just always there. And the fact that we're finding bugs in open source is because that's why it's safer. Projects like React, Firefox, heavily scrutinized, rapidly patched, publicly tracked. That's a happy story, really. He says the bad things about open source, but what about the bad things about closed source? Closed source systems also have bugs, also get scanned, but are never audited publicly. So he talks about the downsides of open source, but he's missing the comparison back to the closed source, where it's much worse. Open source doesn't have more bugs, it has more eyes. Closed source has all these bugs and has all these people exploiting them, and they just hush it up, and they just pay off, they just go bust. So AI does find bugs, but he's exaggerating, because more bugs are actually a positive signal. The bugs will get fixed, and there'll be a more secure product. And there is only a limited number of lines of code. If software has 100,000 lines or 10,000 lines, eventually you will get all the bugs out. It's not magic.
And so what has remained pretty quiet history of vulnerabilities in these projects has now quickly ramped up, and now there's a million different vulnerabilities that the world is scrambling to fix.
But they'll be fixed.
And so there comes our problem. How can we remain open source?
They'll be fixed. It's a one-off transition to a more secure open source world. The open source world is going to have to up the game. The closed source world is going to have to up the game. Everyone is going to have to up their game. Internal apps, which are not open or source, they're just internal apps, they have to up the game. Everyone's going to have to up the game. But we can fight fire with fire. We can use AIs to find them first.
How can we remain open source while still protecting our customers' data? And the problem is we have pulled our hair out trying.
You haven't pulled much of your hair out. Still looks good, Bailey. Still looks great hair. Maybe it was this bit.
And the very simple answer to that question for us is there isn't a good way to do that. Currently, the way it looks for us is we expose ourselves to so much risk in being open source, and the way it looks for us is currently the way it looks for us, the very simple answer to that question for us is there isn't a good way to do that.
This is a false dilemma, a false dichotomy. He frames the problem as open source versus protecting customer data. Those are not opposing goals. You can have open source code that's secure systems and protects data. We already do every day. Most of the internet runs on open source, handling far more sensitive data than this. When you connect to your bank, you're using an open source protocol. You're using SSL. There isn't a good way. It's presented as a universal statement, but it's actually, I couldn't find a good way. Our team couldn't find a good way. Not that there isn't a good way. We didn't try hard enough, or we ran out of money, or we ran out of time, or our venture capitalists, his venture capital funders might have demanded it.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it.
It isn't impossible. It doesn't mean it's impossible, it's just they didn't want to build it. You know, maybe it's the right decision business-wise, I don't know, but from a technical perspective, you can build it. You can build a secure calendar that's open source. There are harder things that are being done in the world. There are harder things that are being done in the open source world than building a calendar. Calendar is a good thing. It's an important thing. I don't want to sound dismissive of the problem, but you're either open source or you're not. It was either just a marketing scam or you were in it. And if you're in it, you find the answer. Because we're software engineers. That's what we do. We find the answer. So it's not really about code being visible. It's about how the system is structured. You've got separation of concerns. Have you isolated sensitive components? Have you got proper auth boundaries? Are you managing your secrets well? Are your servers secure? Your pipeline secure? It's an architectural problem, not a visibility problem.
Currently, the way it looks for us is we expose ourselves to so much risk in being open source. And although going closed source doesn't make us impossible to hack, it reduces that risk by up to 10 times.
The 10 times safer claim again. No sourcing, no evidence, no definition, no measurement. I mean, if that number, he's based his whole argument on the number and provided no proof it. If that number is just nonsense, then his whole decision collapses, his whole argument collapses.
And so for us, it became a very simple decision.
A simple decision in the sense of the people who made it were simple, perhaps, but reasoning wasn't simple. You know, where's the alternative designs? What about partial open sourcing? What about modularizing it, as I talked about? What about boundary separation? I mean, simple decisions come from simplified models. This is not simple at all.
That we had to simply close source our application, and we've also made major changes.
Open source doesn't mean expose everything. That's his weird assumption. Open source doesn't mean exposing secrets, exposing production config, exposing credentials. Open source means sharing code, not leaking data. If a system is that sensitive, that's when it wants more scrutiny, not less. If there's no good way to do it, that's not an open source problem, that's an architecture problem. If there's no good way to make it secure without closed sourcing it, it's not secure. Closed source provides no real security. If it's hackable open source, it's hackable closed source. So we have the false dichotomy. Either we stay open source and risk data, or we close the code and protect users. That's a fallacy. It ignores better architecture, separating sensitive components, partial open source, stronger security practices. I mean, they're presenting this as a binary choice, and there's clearly more. His reasoning is, we handle sensitive data, therefore we must close the code. But that's a non sequitur. It doesn't follow. The conclusion wasn't drawn from the premise. Handling sensitive data doesn't mean source must be hidden. I would argue handling sensitive data means source must be peer reviewed and audited with as many eyes as possible and with as many AIs as possible. Because you have a bug once and you fix it, and then now it's secure. You've got to get to these bugs before the attacker does. The happy path is you find all the bugs before the attacker does. The not so happy path is the attacker gets in, then you fix it. But if you survive that, it's then fixed and the attacker can't attack the same way. I mean, it's just a big appeal to fear here, especially like emphasizing healthcare data, market moving data, negligence. It's all like an appeal to fear. It's just like Bill Gates in the 80s. A shift from technical reasoning to risk framing, but he's not framing the risks equally. He's framing the risks, his perceived risk of open source, but he's not talking about the greater risk of closed source. So he's mixing up code visibility, which is a property of development, and data security, which is a property of system design. The visibility of code and the protection of data are not the same thing.
And we've also made major changes to how things like authentication and billing and, you know, the handling of calendar credentials work to make sure that we are diverged from the open source code in Cal.com because we simply need to make our customers' data secure.
This is where he's doubling down on security through obscurity. He changes the system, not the visibility. So he's changed two things. He's changed it from to be open source to be closed source, which is irrelevant. But then he's also saying he's changed the authentication, billing and credential handling to be more secure, which was a good thing to do anyway. Unless he's saying, oh, hackers, please don't look at other code that was already published because now we're different. Please leave us alone. And that's kind of a cry for help. Maybe that's what his venture capitalist told him. If you want any more money, you have to say, we've changed it from what was in their evil open source GitHub. What he's saying, these are architectural changes, not visibility changes. And that's how you get security, through the design. So auth boundaries, secret handling, access control. That's where the security comes from, not whether the repo is public. He's mixing up two things here. We've changed the design to make it secure. Good. We need to hide the code to make it secure. That's irrelevant to if it's secure or not. You don't need both. You need to do the first one. Don't waste your time making YouTube videos if your system's not secure. Go make your system secure, and once your system's secure, then make the YouTube videos. Then change the mess about with the visibility and the GitHubs and everything. Make it secure. Put your energy into that. Divergence, just so it's different to what was in our GitHub before, doesn't provide any security. But if they've separated sensitive components, reworked critical systems, created boundaries, improved the credential handling, that's good. Good, Bailey. Do those things. Those kind of things really need to be shared. Nobody really cares about your credential handling. Nobody really cares about like your internal, the access control and the stuff that's just like between you and your customers. That's not really useful for anyone else. Unless they're running a calendar SaaS service, why are you bothering to open source those bits? If redesigning those parts to make it secure, the problem wasn't open source. You don't need to hide the code. You need to design the system properly. You don't need security through obscurity. You need security through good architecture.
To make our customers' data secure. We have always had quite a strong focus on security, privacy, and compliance. It's probably one of the most core things that make Cow.com what it is.
You idiot! You made me. Remember? You dropped me into that vat of chemicals. That wasn't easy to get over. And don't think that I didn't try.
And we are ultimately presented with a situation where we have pretty much no choice.
You killed my parents. What? Oh. What are you talking about? I made you. You made me first. Hey, back brain. I mean, I was a kid when I killed your parents. I mean, I say I made you. You gotta say you made me. And how childish can you get, huh?
Than to close source, because we just cannot risk our customers' data.
I mean, again, it's just a lot of statements that don't pass the philosophical test. We've always focused on security. We've pretty much no choice. We cannot risk customer data. It's not technical argument, it's framing. No choice is almost never true. In engineering, there are always trade-offs. Engineering, there are trade-offs. There's no choice. It's, we had this trade-offs, we ran out of time. The venture capitalists were having a go at us saying, why are you in this open source thing if you can't secure it? Lock the thing down, or we're going to throw you out. Lock the thing down, or we'll find a new CEO who's going to come from Microsoft and he's going to lock it down. Lock it down, or we're going to sell all your customers to Microsoft and call it a day. I just don't like how he's tying the rest of the customer data and whether the code is open, because again, they're not the same thing. Every system has risk. Closed source systems get breached, have vulnerabilities, are attacked every day. Closing the code doesn't reduce risk. That's just been disproved. And AI speeding things up doesn't undisprove it. When you close source, what happens? Fewer external auditors, less public scrutiny, slower independent discovery. You're not eliminating risk, you're centralizing it onto yourself. And he uses a lot of weighty words: security, privacy, compliance. These are appeals to authority. They don't prove a conclusion, they're just appeals to security. We need security, provide privacy, compliance. Everyone needs that. They're good things. But that doesn't mean it's a closed source versus open source thing. Before we watched this, the comments said they just had a business reason to do this and now they're just tech washing it. Closing source often aligns with control, monetization, reducing external dependency, trying to quash competition. There may be business reasons for this decision and there may be good reasons, but they're being presented as technical security reasons, and that's what I'm criticizing. There's some business reasons here, I'm sure. And it's not just we need to protect our customers' data. There's something going on behind the scenes. And again, I don't really want to guess the motives. It's not really fair that I guess the motives. He's made this video. It's a good video. Nice background. Nice hair. I'm just going to focus on the technical side of things. But clearly there's something going on. For me, transparency is an asset, not a liability. He's saying transparency is a liability. I'm saying transparency is an asset. And also just don't like that we have no choice. In engineering, there's always a choice. We want to go to the moon, we go to the moon. We figure out how to do it. We want to go to Mars, we'll choose to go to Mars. We'll figure it out. I'm sure we can make a secure calendar that's open source. In the period of the 80s, 90s, 2000s, people chose that transparency helps security because more people can verify it. And that is still true with AIs. AIs is just like more people. AIs, instead of just like human people, we've got these robot people that are looking at the code, but it's still transparency helps security. And I as I said before, I still think with the AI world, I'm an optimist. He's a pessimist. I'm an optimist. I believe that the AI revolution will leave open source security, open source software, and hopefully all software, more secure than it was before. This inevitability narrative.
You hear that, Mr. Anderson? That is the sound of inevitability.
That being said, we are open sourcing all of the existing Cal.com open source code base. We're calling it cal.diy.
Setting up home, B&Q it when you're building your own.
Going to be the open source spin-off of Cal.com.
B&Q it, you can do it when you B&Q it.
All of the code at this point of time is going into there.
Men going for power, B&Q it when you're looking for a shower, B&Q it.
That being said, I did just mention we are going to rewrite some of the core components for our production application.
You can do it when you B&Q it.
So as to make sure that by open sourcing a replica right now, our customers...
Girls for their flats, B&Q it. For the perfect match, B&Q it. You can do it when you B&Q.
Calling it DIY frames it in a very specific way. You've got cal.diy and cal.com. For me, DIY is a positive concept. People empowering themselves to take control of things themselves, to fix things themselves. It's good. Everyone has to start somewhere. DIY is very innovative. Scratching your own itch can provide an amazing solution to a problem in a new way.
Our homes deserve so much more than dreaming. Today we do.
But I hope it's not. This is not a cynical thing. It's not some. I hope some marketing person hasn't sat in a room and said,
"Why do I surround myself with fools? Even the robots are smarter than you."
If we call it DIY, it won't sound like enterprise software. It will sound like a weekend project. It will sound like not serious hobbyists. I mean, I understand they want to segment the market, but I'm hoping they're not doing it cynically.
You can do it.
The core components for our production app is going into there. That being said, I did just mention we are...
I mean, he said he's repeating himself, and he is, but it is still revealing, I think.
I did just mention we are going to rewrite some of the core components for our production application, so as to make sure that by open sourcing a replica right now, our customers aren't still at risk. And
so they're rewriting core components, sensitive pathways, critical systems. That's fixing the system. You don't need to hide the system to fix the system. I'm saying we can open source a replica safely. If the replica is safe to expose or it's not safe to expose, that's in the design. It's safe to use or not to use, that's in the design. There's a slight contradiction here. He's saying open source creates risk, but we have to redesign it to be less risk. If he's saying exposing the code is dangerous, that's a sign that the system is dangerous and they're hoping nobody has a good look at it. They're hoping it stays hidden. Good security assumes the attacker knows the system.
So we are basically giving out cal.diy to the world, still trying to, hold true to all those like open source commitments and morals that we had when we started this company. I
mean, this is the most interesting thing he said in the whole video.
Hold true to all those like open source commitments and morals that we had when we started this company.
And this is where it's kind of zoomed out. We're not just talking about code anymore. We're talking about values. He says commitments and morals. Open source, closed source, they're not just development models, they're belief systems. Open source didn't appear out of nowhere. It's based on like the development of science, reproducibility, peer review. Engineering has like shared standards. Academia has like publish your work, let your work stand, openly for criticism. And then, there's like the religious backgrounds, like truth is something revealed, not hidden. That sharing is moral, that do unto others as you would have them do unto you is in all the great religions. Truth should survive scrutiny is the basis of all the Enlightenment. True in ancient Greece and ancient Israel and other ancient cultures that truth should survive scrutiny, and then in Enlightenment it was brought out to a deeper level that truth should survive scrutiny. And that's how we got the science, the modern science arose, how the Industrial Revolution arose, how technology arose, how computers arose, how software arose. Open systems can be tested, can be verified, can be challenged. Security that depends on secrecy is fragile. I mean, this is a real tension, to be fair. You've got ideals versus his responsibility running this company, openness versus control, community versus paying customers. I don't think he's wrong to feel the tension, but I'm not sure about the conclusion he draws from it. It's not just about being nice and sharing code. It's also about building systems that are strong enough to be examined, even by AIs. I mean, if your system only works when hidden, you've lost the thing that open source was aiming for. The ideas that free software and open source were based on are about scientific and technological progress. We try out different things, and then we create the canonical version. So we all have our we try out different kernels, and then we work together on the Linux kernel. We try out different security things, then we work together on OpenSSL. You know, there's a kind of canonicalization of progress that you create a foundation that the next level of tech can build on. So all kinds of crazy things happen in companies and startups and in communities and projects and personal projects. And then you get the canonical open source version, which is the best version, the most secure version. And then we build on that with a new layer of innovation. You have all these operating systems, and then you have all these software libraries, and you have AI on top of that. And then on top of that, you can have something else.
Commitments and morals that we had when we started this company. This isn't a decision we take lightly. The call where we first discussed going closed source.
Which call? Who was the call with? The call with the investors, with the developers, with the customers? Who was in the call? It's not like decision. I think he means an actual video call or something.
The call where we first discussed going closed source and the sobering realization that we may need to go open source was actually...
Oh, he's made a slip up. He said open source when he means closed source. So this call when they were all held hostage went...
Going closed source and the... So lightly. The call where we first discussed going closed source and the sobering realization that we may need to go open source was...
Yeah, I didn't mishear it. He said open source when he means closed source.
Was actually one of the most emotional and difficult calls that I've had in 5 years of running this company.
Maybe he is emotional now because he slips up and says open instead of closed. And nobody who published this polished video bothered to listen this far. I mean, I have loads of mistakes in my videos, but I'm just a one-man band recording his thoughts in the middle of the night after a long day coding at work. This is a PR exercise. He's done his hair, got to the studio.
Most emotional and difficult calls that I've had in 5 years of running this company.
Who is that call with? That was with the developers, is it? They said, no way, we're all going to quit. There's a shift in audience here. He was talking to us, the general internet population, perhaps the customers, perhaps. Now he's talking, is he talking to the internal people in the company?
Open source was actually one of the most emotional and difficult calls that I've had in 5 years of running this company.
I mean, it's still a business decision at the end of the day.
One of the most emotional in closed source and the sobering realization that we may need to go open source was actually one of the most emotional and difficult calls that I've had in 5 years of running this company.
So there's definitely a tension here. This is where it gets hostage video. It's got the investors on one side perhaps and the developers on the other side. Or maybe the investors on one side and some of the customers maybe, and then like some of the customers and the developers on the other side. Seems unlikely you have a call with developers and investors. The engineers won't be having an engineering discussion at the same time the venture capital people will be on.
Was actually one of the most emotional and difficult calls that I've had in 5 years of...
So let's think. So he's been told that it has to go by the board or the investors, or somebody has lent on him and told him that it has to be closed source. And now he presents this to the engineers and they riot and throw crap at him. Is that they digitally put their thumbs down and he has to shepherd them into the abattoir?
One of the most emotional and difficult calls that I've had in 5 years of running this company. If things change in the future and there become better ways to defend against this stuff, then we will absolutely revisit this and try to become open source once again. But
who is the we here as well? We will absolutely, it's the kind of management speak, but hard to decipher.
Revisit this. If things change in the future and there become better ways to defend against this stuff, then we will absolutely revisit this.
We will absolutely revisit this. We will absolutely revisit this. Not just we will revisit this. We will absolutely revisit this. Absolutely and revisit are in tension there. Absolutely is we will do something. Positive thing. Strong adverb. but revisit is passive. They don't kind of work. That's what a lot of managerial speak doesn't work, because the grammar is terrible. I don't know if that's a prayer or peak managerial English, but if things changed, we will absolutely revisit this. You have conditional vagueness, if things change. Then you have the strong adverb, absolutely. And then the soft, passive, non-committal, revisit this. I mean, revisit means review, discuss, do nothing. A lot of managerial speak doesn't say very much, which is why we'll still need software engineers, because you can't speak like that to a computer and get good results. Even if you abstract coding behind AI, you still need to know what you're saying. You still need to know what you actually want the result to be. You still have to speak in positive English. You have to speak in direct, plain English. Stephen King said, the road to hell is paved with adverbs. And someone else said, never use adverbs because all adverbs are lies. I mean, adverbs are lies because the stronger the word, the weaker the commitment is.
And try to become open source once again. But the simple reality is, for now, with all of these, there are AI vulnerability scanners. They pop up out of nowhere. Every single week, I get some kind of cold email or DM from a different company that's building one of these open source vulnerability scanners, and they're all finding different things. And that's the problem. Without one clear source of truth, it's never too obvious whether you're secure or not.
He's right in that there are a lot of tools. They find different issues. Security is messy, and it's particularly messy at the moment. We are in a new era, and it does take a little time to adapt to this, but adapt we will. He starts with a premise and then moves to a conclusion, and I don't think he really proves the move. Conclusion never follows from the premise. There is no single source of truth. If you can make that single source of truth, it would be a great app. This is a linting problem, not a testing problem. You make the code work, then you make it right, including secure. At the moment, you have to run different AI, different scanners and different security tools and different forms of auditing. There's definitely scope to stick a model in front of it. It's a hard field, but it's not an infinite field. It's not as hard as putting a man on the moon. We'll get there. As I said before, we'll fight fire with fire. Don't panic. It's a short-term problem. We'll have the tooling. The tooling will develop past this. It's a software problem, and the software will solve it. But there's no single source of truth, open or closed. Closed doesn't give you that magic that he wants. He wants a checkbox that can tick off, this thing's secure. Going to closed source doesn't give you that tick box. There's no single source of truth for making a closed source application secure, because they're often not secure. But I mean, if you can make that app where you just do make secure and it does everything, you'll win. So do make that app. We will write some things at a higher level of abstraction. Getting memory segfaults all the time got boring, so for a lot of the time we write Python, which is a memory safe language, and not always a memory efficient language, but it's a memory safe language. You won't get segfaults when using it. That does allow faster creation of apps, so we'll have the same thing for security. It will be possible to write corporate apps, SaaS apps, that kind of thing, in some kind of sandbox which handles the security for you. Not all apps are going to do that. You're going to never want to put the Linux kernel or anything hardware performant in that kind of sandbox, but there will be a sandbox for app development, SaaS development, internal app development, corporate app development. And again, I just don't accept the leap because security is uncertain, therefore we close the code. Uncertainty is exactly why you want more visibility. You want more tools finding more issues. And when he says different tools find different things, good. Use those tools, fix the bugs. That's defense in depth. You will get the code to a level where it's infeasible to attack. I mean, what he's saying is security is hard, and it is hard. Tooling is noisy, it is. But there are signals. There will be a clear signal. There will be a way. This is not a failure of open source. This is the nature of security. Security is inherently uncertain. You never know everything. But hiding the code doesn't remove that uncertainty. It just reduces who can help you with it. There's no unit test for secure because it's something you maintain, not prove once and just tick off. Every release, check. Every release, check. Every code change, check. It's a linting problem. In multiple tools finding different issues is not a bug. That's defense in depth.
There's no single unit test for is your application secure or not. And so it currently puts us in a very uncertain perspective. I'll say it again. We absolutely hated having to make the decision to go closed source. It is pretty much against everything that we started the company with. And whether you know or care about Cal.com being open source, it's something which is very important to us and our team. And the fact that we're pretty much forced to closed source the application.
Interesting, he said his team. So I think they were the ones that were furious because perhaps they'd signed up to work for Cal.com because it was an open source product, and now they find they're writing the same kind of corporate SaaS apps everyone else is. Not everything has to be open source. Not everything's of the quality to be open source. Some days you get to make Michelangelo's David, which gets to be in the museum in front of everyone, and some days you get to lay a bathroom floor. Some days you get to build a cathedral, and some days you get to build a car park. If you're building a SaaS product or a corporate product for your customers or your internal users, you don't owe the world the whole code base. It's probably not useful. If you can do it, boss move, but it's not necessarily the right abstraction. You have to find the right boundaries, the right abstractions. Sometimes an open source app works, but more often it's collaboration on the pieces that everyone depends on. So I don't have a problem with the decision. It may be the best decision. Many companies I've worked for use open source a lot internally. If they find something particularly innovative, they might open source it. And if it's just got a lot of APIs and code that's not much more sophisticated than configuration, then there's absolutely no point in open sourcing it because nobody else cares. Nobody else but you, your customers, your staff will ever care. So it's not generic enough to be useful to other people. So it's not really about open source or closed source. It's how the system is designed, how the product is positioned, how the code's broken up into libraries. I have no issue with them changing how they write their code. I disagree with how he's explaining it, how he's justifying it, the technical arguments he's making. Open source often works best in pieces and not in one big monolith. But anyway, I like that he made a video. I like that he tried to engage his community. It's a good move. It's a good video. It's good that he justified what he was doing. Transparency is good, even if it's transparency about having less transparency. Well done, Bailey. Good video. Let's see what the replies are. We have a Hacker News article about it. Let's go. Cal.com is going closed source. That's the same link. Dave Brewing published a very relevant piece yesterday. Is that the Simon W? It is the Simon W. Simon Williamson, formerly of Django. So the Simon Williamson says, Drew Brewing published a very relevant piece yesterday that came to the opposite conclusion. Since security exploits can now be finding by spending tokens, open source is more valuable because open source libraries can share that auditing budget, while closed source software has to find all the exploits themselves in private. That's a really good point. If Mythos continues to find exploits so long as you keep throwing money at it, security is reduced to a brutally simple equation. To harden a system, you need to spend more tokens discovering exploits than attackers will spend exploiting them. Thanks, I've re-upped that one. Cybersecurity looks like proof of work now. That's a really good point. Maybe it always was. Cybersecurity looks like proof of work now. Is security spending more tokens than your attacker? Last week we learned about Anthropic's Mythos. That was our departure point as well. That's where the Cal.com article began, talking about this. A new LLM so strikingly capable of computer security tasks that Anthropic didn't release it publicly. Instead, only critical software makers have been granted access, providing them time to harden their systems. Today we're announcing Project Glasswing, a new initiative that brings together Amazon Web Services, Anthropic, Apple, Broadcom, Cisco, CrowdStrike, Google, JP Morgan Chase, the Linux Foundation, Microsoft, Nvidia, and Palo Alto Networks in an effort to secure the world's most critical software. So, I mean, it's brilliant. One of the world's most powerful frontier models. So the good guys will get this first. We'll find all the bugs or most of the bugs and we'll patch them before the rest of the world get them. Anthropic is committing $100 million in usage credits and $4 million in direct donations to open source security organizations. See, no panic, no panic, no need to panic. It's all good. It's all right in the end. Turned out nice again. We quickly brew through our standard stages of processing big AI claims: shock, existential fear, hype, skepticism, and criticism, moving on to the next big thing. A third-party analysis landed from the AI Security Institute, largely supporting Anthropic's claims. Mythos is really good, a step up over previous frontier models in a landscape where cyber performance was already rapidly improving. The entire report is worth reading. I want to focus on the following chart, detailing the ability of different models to successfully complete a simulated complex corporate network attack. Full network takeover, 32 steps, loads of tokens, 100 million tokens. A 32-step network attack simulation spanning initial reconnaissance. Mythos was the only model to complete the task in 3 out of its 10 attempts. This chart suggests an interesting security economy. To harden a system, we need to spend more tokens discovering exploits than attackers spend exploiting them. So if each attack costs 12,500, 125k for all 10 runs, so it isn't that cheap. Spending this amount of tokens on this amount of compute on attacking a system, there has to be some actual money in the vault. There has to be some actual value to attacking it. Economics and physics and gravity applies to the attackers as much as to the defenders. They don't have infinite compute. States might have something approaching infinite compute, but a hacking gang doesn't have infinite compute. Here we go. You don't get points for being clever. You win by playing more. You can't get around it. It's a system that echoes cryptocurrency's proof-of-work system, where success is tied to raw computational work. Buy the tokens, maybe find an exploit. This calculus has a few immediate takeaways. Open source remains critically important. So this is the opposite of that video we watched. If security is purely a matter of throwing tokens at a system, Linus's law that given enough eyeballs, all boxes shallow, expands to include tokens. If corporations that rely on open source software libraries spend to secure them with tokens, it's likely going to be more secure than your budget allows. Certainly this has complexities. Cracking a widely used open source software package is inherently more valuable than hacking a one-off implementation, which incentivizes attackers to spend more on OSS targets. If you make some internal closed thing, you ain't going to have as much tokens to secure than the open source ones do, because the open source ones are collaborated. So say Google depends on OpenSSL, the attackers will try and attack Google first because that's where all the money is, and Amazon, that's where all the money is, and by the time you get to use it, it's already secure. It's already been attacked 6 ways to Sunday by the time you get it. So say you don't want to use OpenSSL and you want to use your closed source homemade SSL or a closed source from a company with a few customers SSL, then they're going to be far less secure than the open source version that's been audited by Google and Amazon and all these other people. It's going to be more secure than your budget allows. The budget, you can't fight Google and Amazon's budget. All these other people, Broadcom, Microsoft, Nvidia, Apple, they got way more money than you got. So if they're securing the libraries and they're using them, it's good for you to use them. If all of big tech and lots of other companies are auditing these open source libraries, they win the token war. Hardening will be an additional phase for agentic coders. It's linting, development and code review. Development, review, hardening. Make it work, make it right, make it fast, make it harden. It's linting. Best practices, it's peer review. You still need to buy more tokens than attackers do. So for your code and my code, we're going to buy more tokens than the attacker will. And our code is based on open source libraries that have been hardened by these companies. So it's all good. Lots of comments on this. Open source isn't dead. Cal.com announced they're transitioning their core code-based from open source. The reasoning provided by their CEO, Bailey Pumfleet, is that AI has automated vulnerability discovery at scale. In this new world, they argue, transparency becomes exposure. In many ways, our platform is the exact technology Cal.com is worried about. We agree with their premise. AI has fundamentally altered the security landscape, but we fundamentally disagree with their conclusion. And that's what I said. Closing your code is not the solution to the AI-driven threats. That's what I said. Retreating from open source will not protect you from AI hackers. Black box AI does not care if your repo is private. Exactly. The assumption behind closing source code is that attackers need to read your code to exploit it. This might have been true for static analysis tools, but modern autonomous AI agents do not work like that. Tools like Strix excel at black box and grey box testing. They dynamically interact with live endpoints, manipulate browser states, analyze network traffic, and cover complex business logic flaws without ever needing repo access. Closing your source code does not stop an AI from probing your API or finding an authorization bypass in your webhooks. It just removes the good eyeballs from your code base while leaving your attack surface completely visible to the bad ones. Security through obscurity is a losing bet against automation. When code is closed, it relies heavily on internal security teams and periodic manual pen testing. But as Cal.com directly noted, attackers now have infinite tireless AI interns probing for flaws. If you obscure your code, you're making a bet that your internal team can find and fix flaws faster than an automated swarm of external AI agents can discover them from the outside. Historically, security through obscurity has always failed. Against AI, it will fail exponentially faster. There we go. Told you. They didn't take an hour to tell you. Fight fire with fire. Cal.com, I said that too. Cal.com is right that throughput of software development has outpaced traditional security. Code is shipped faster than human security engineers can review it. But the answer is not to hide the code. The answer is to integrate AI defenders directly into the development lifestyle. If AI is bringing near zero cost exploitation, the defense must be near zero cost continuous validation. Security testing has to become an automated integral part of the CI/CD pipeline, just like a linter. When a developer opens a pull request, an AI agent should immediately attempt to exploit it. When infrastructure changes, an AI should autonomously validate the new attack surface. You do not beat automated attackers by turning off the lights. You beat them by running better automation on the inside. Open source is not dead. The era of relying on many human eyeballs to make bugs shallow might be ending, but open source is not dead. We are keeping strict open source because we believe transparency makes us stronger. The tools to secure the next generation of software need to be as accessible as the tools used to attack it. Hiding code will not stop the AI hackers, but empowering developers with their own autonomous security agent is just right. Who's right? Time will tell. What do you think? Let me know and go secure something.